Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the On Deck podcast by Prospects Live. I'm Nate Rasmussen. I'm joined by the director of pro scouting at Prospects Live, Rhys White, and we're going to talk about a bunch of different things today, Rhys. We're going to talk some MLB playoff updates. We're getting close to the playoffs starting, and some things have started shaking up in Major League Baseball. We're going to talk about playoff X factors for every team that could still make the playoffs. We're going to go through the MVP voting and who we think might be some of the back end of the ballot guys, like who's finishing 10th in the MVP race in the AL this year. And then we're going to talk about some minor leaguers that we want to see debut on opening day 2026. So we have a jam-packed episode for you guys, and let's get right into it, Rhys. MLB playoff update. Should we start with the Tigers, or do you want to save that for later?
I think we should save that for later. Let's start off with a positive note before I start to get really frustrated and upset.
Okay, what's the positive note in the MLB playoffs right now then?
We have a race for the American League East title because the Blue Jays have decided to go 4-6 in the last 10, and the Yankees have subsequently decided to go 7-3 in the last 10 games. So we all of a sudden have a race on our hands. The Blue Jays are starting to crumble a little bit, nowhere near as big of a collapse as the Detroit Tigers, but that's neither here nor there. We'll talk about that later. And yeah, I mean, I was about to say your Seahawks. Your Seahawks play tonight as we record. Your Mariners, similar color schemes. I kind of like it when cities do that. I'm a big fan of like Pittsburgh. The city of Pittsburgh does that, but we're not here to talk about the Pirates. And yeah, everything in the American League, unless you're a Tigers fan, is actually looking really interesting.
So let's talk a little bit about these Yankees and these Blue Jays. Had some weird endings to some games recently for both of these squads. I don't know if you saw it, but the Jose Caballero pass ball steal of home for the Yankees to steal a game the other night. And then the Blue Jays, Alejandro Kirk getting the good old-fashioned 9-3 to end the game. The Blue Jays were kind of mounting a rally there, or at least it looked like there was some action in the ninth inning, and Alejandro Kirk gets thrown out at first base from right field. I don't know. I haven't seen that a whole lot in the major leagues, Rhys. I just thought that was a funny thing to happen to a team that is currently contending for the 1 seed in the American League. Maybe bad vibes is how I'd put it up to be. But what are you kind of seeing with these two teams right now? And how do you think one of them is going to separate themselves?
So I think one of the big things is the use of Jose Caballero has kind of been an interesting subplot for the Yankees. Anthony Volpe, let's be real, has not been the best defender and has gone through stretches of not being the best hitter. Jose Caballero is perfectly fine. He can come in, be a good impact base runner. He's a better base runner than Anthony Volpe. He's a better defender than Anthony Volpe right now. He's probably a better hitter than Anthony Volpe right now. So, them using that, Aaron Judge, going band for band with Cal Raleigh on the same day, basically going home run for home run, has been fantastic to see. And then, Trent Grisham has continued to be one of the better, under the radar players this season, has been fantastic. The pitching has been fantastic. Max Fried recently pitched a gem. Carlos Rodon has pitched a gem. Luis Hill has been pitching very well. It's going to be a very interesting discussion on what the Yankees decide to do with that third playoff rotation spot, because it's 3 right-handed guys all vying for the one spot, and then 2 of those guys are going to go into the bullpen kind of be maybe demons. So, and then with the Blue Jays, it just seems like all of a sudden George Springer's cooled off a little bit. He was never going to be the 215 WRC plus guy that he was earlier on as points. And then Alejandro Kirk getting thrown out at first base just, is like a beer league softball move. If we're going to be 100% honest, actually, I don't even think you can throw out in beer league softball. But yeah, it's the rotation for the Blue Jays hasn't been the best. The bullpen's been a little bit a touch shaky in the past couple of games, but the good thing for us is that all of a sudden now we have a divisional race on our hands.
Yeah, exciting times for sure. And it looks like whoever does win that will likely be the 1 seed, unless the Mariners, maybe go 4-0 over this last little stretch of the year. And then it looks like the Mariners will get that 2 seed. So we're looking at the AL East winner and the Mariners getting the byes in the American League. And whoever loses between the Yankees and Blue Jays immediately gets thrown into kind of a weird position, having to face either the Guardians or the Tigers as the best wild card team. So let's move over there, Rhys. I'm sorry to do it to you. Guardians, Tigers. All right. The Tigers are now 1 game behind the Guardians. How are we feeling? What are we looking at with a couple days left to play?
I cannot believe what's happened. Let's just throw the Tigers are 1-9 in the last 10. And guess what? The Guardians are the reverse of that, 9-1 in the last 10 games. So the Guardians have been absolutely fantastic. They've been hitting small ball. George Valera is making contact, which is bizarre and weird for someone who is basically entering non-prospect status. Brian Rocchio has been fantastic, and the man, the myth, the legend, someone that some people keep saying is underrated. I don't understand. If you watch baseball, this guy isn't underrated. Jose Ramirez has just been fantastic. All of a sudden, he decided to turn into a Gold Glove defender at third base, locking down the hot corner, making some of the craziest throws you'll ever see. And opportune hitting. This is just a team that they're playing fundamentally sound baseball, and the Tigers are not. The Tigers are messing up routinely in pitching, hitting, situational stuff. It just seems like everything is going poorly for the Tigers.
Yeah, and we're looking at Cleveland Guardians team who Fangraphs gave a 0.0% chance to make the playoffs as recently as, I believe, a month ago, and now they're at 96%. Does this give you no faith in these kind of percentile rankings, playoff percentage rankings, or has the Tigers' collapse just been that legendary that it was a 0.01% chance of it actually happening, Rhys?
I think that it shows you that nothing is 0% when you're that close, right? Like, it shows you that the tail end outcomes can happen. And unfortunately, last season we saw as the Tigers went very, they kind of were on the opposite end. They got really lucky, they got really hot, everything sort of worked for them. Now everything's sort of working against them. One of their more important players last season was Trey Sweeney, and Trey Sweeney has been atrocious defensively. He's been making it just seems like he's like a -6 outs above average at shortstop, and if you don't like that stat for some reason, he has been like a -5 DRS guy. So it's been a lot of, it kind of shows you that anything can sort of happen, especially if you allow the Tigers are the team that allowed the Guardians back in. If the Tigers just play 500 baseball to end out the season, everything would be fine. But they've decided to not play 500 baseball. They've decided to play at the Colorado Rockies, not the Detroit Tigers.
Looking at the Tigers' upcoming schedule, they have a matchup with Boston for their last 3 games, and it looks like Tarek Skubal is going to pitch game 162. Does that give you any faith in maybe the Tigers being able to win that last game of the season to sneak their way into the playoffs still?
Yeah, I think they're gonna need to back into the postseason. It's not going to be pretty, but they moved Skubal up in the most recent start so that they can have him pitch 162, and that's kind of why you have the best pitcher on the face of the planet, right? Except for when he decides that he wants to try out for the Detroit Lions and be the center for the team. So yeah, we're talking about. I mean, that game is going to be probably the most important game of the season, obviously, it goes without saying, and against another fellow wild card team as well, because the Red Sox kind of need to win out here, if I remember correctly. So there's a lot of ways in which it's going to be one of the most fascinating, probably going to be one of the most watched games this season, just from a casual perspective. And this is what makes baseball fantastic. You have all 162 games, but it all comes down to one game, basically. And I think that's the way in which the Tigers are going.
Yeah, these last couple days in the American League are going to be super interesting for, Astros, Tigers, Guardians, and then obviously the aforementioned Yankees, Blue Jays matchup. It feels like the Seattle Mariners have kind of just established where they're going to be at this point, which is likely the number 2.
Can I ask you a question? What is it like sitting pretty in the American League? Like, I thought I was sitting pretty for a while, and I'm very envious of what you've got going on in Seattle.
This is like my Oscars winning speech right here. I've been alive for 23 years, Rhys. I have never been alive for the Mariners to win the AL West. 23 years. They've never won the AL West in my lifetime. That's a crazy stat. Guess how many times they made the playoffs in my lifetime?
2 or 3, right?
Once.
That's right. That's right, because I remember in the early 2000s they had that epic collapse, right? It was like it was Detroit Tigers asks, I might be saying. So
in 2001 they had the greatest record, win-loss, 116 wins, and I was not alive for that. Ever since then, it has been.
I forget how young you are.
It has been sadness in my Mariners lifetime, and I am a homer. Sue me. So getting them to clinch, the Mariners love to be like one game back in the wild card the last couple of years, heading into game 162, and just barely miss the playoffs. To have the division clinched this early with 4 games left, is something that I just could have never imagined. And if you would have asked me a month ago, I was just hoping that they would be able to back their way into a playoff spot. And now they are 5 games up on the Houston Astros with 4 left to play. It's absolutely incredible. It's really cool. Josh Naylor, give him the bag, pay him whatever he wants, because he has absolutely changed the trajectory of this team. The guys got healthy at the right time. Starting pitching is going to get really scary come October, and I'm really excited to see kind of how they match up. At this point, I think that we are the favorites in the AL, looking at all these other teams with how deep we are in all facets of the game. So I'm very excited. But as a Mariners fan who hasn't had much in his life, I can't get too excited because I am programmed for sadness, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I'm 100% there with you. Like, very similar things with my football life, right? Like the Lions have been historically awful for a long time. Now all of a sudden they're good, and I don't know how to take it. But yeah, this is. Um, so do we want to move over to the playoff? Actually, no, we need to move over to the National League because there's some things going on in the National League as well. We can't just talk about the best league. We have to go over to the worst league in the National League.
Yeah, we do. All right. So in the National League, things are starting to get kind of set with that last team still slightly up for grabs. It looks like it's going to be the Mets as of right now, but we still have 4 games left to play, Rhys. Do you think that the Reds still have a shot at this thing, or even the Diamondbacks with an outside chance?
I don't think the Diamondbacks really have a chance, although they've been playing fantastic as of recently. Just a little too late for them.
All right, so talking about the New York Mets, Rhys, who look like the likely favorite to get the 6th seed in the NL. They have a game against the Chicago Cubs tonight. Everyone else is seeing this tomorrow. So let's talk about 3 games against the Marlins. What do you think they need to do in these last 3 games? Maybe just go 2-1 to secure that final seed in the NL?
Yeah, but these Marlins are frisky, man. There isn't. I mean, we keep talking about these teams that are doing really well over the last 10 games. I don't know if people realize how good the Marlins have been doing. They've been 8-2 in their last 10 games. They're looking like a team that's going to springboard themselves. I think people are going to call them a sleeper next year, and I think that that's very much warranted if you believe in the Kyle Towers breakout and whatnot. So they do need to go 2-1. It's going to be very fascinating. If they win the first 2 games of the series, then I think they can rest Nolan McLean and kind of keep his prospect status going forward. But ultimately, if they have to, break glass in case of emergency, have Nolan McLean pitch 162 and make sure they lock themselves into the postseason.
Yeah. Yeah, that'll be a fascinating thing to actually monitor. And we talked about it a couple episodes, how the Mets do have this kind of veteran-led team, and the veterans are showing up in a big way the last week or so. As the Mets scuffled a couple weeks ago, they're starting to climb back up the mountain. Francisco Lindor, Juan Soto, Brandon Nimmo, and even Francisco Alvarez, all top 25 hitters in the last 7 days, according to Fangraphs. I do think that matters. They are leaning on the guys they need to at the right time. Pete Alonso has been no slouch, obviously, as well this year. But the National League is just a bit less exciting than the American League right now.
I mean, the fascinating thing with the Mets is who's going to be in their playoff rotation. We talked about they have a veteran-laden team. Their rotation is going to be about as green as anybody's rotation is, right? I mean, we could be talking about Nolan McLean, Brandon Sproat, and maybe Jonah Tong all being starters. I don't think you want to have Jonah Tong being a starter. I think that would be an absolute mismanagement of him. I think he'd be really good in the once through an order sort of piggyback situation with Sean Manaea or David Peterson. So, yeah, I mean, do you really get that excited about the Reds kind of like backdooring their way into this? Maybe I'm not really that jazzed about the Reds. Like I feel like they're going to be like quote the worst team that makes the postseason. So yeah, I'm just the National League's not as exciting. You have the Brewers and Cubs already clinched. You have the Phillies just being the Phillies and being awesome, and then the Dodgers and Padres have clinched as well. Did you see Roki Sasaki out of the bullpen though? That's pretty nuts.
We should talk about that, actually. It looks like they finally figured out the velo thing a little bit. He absolutely plays as one of the better relievers in the game in a short span. This is something that we have talked, and I don't know if it was a conversation you and me have had, or maybe I've had with someone else at Prospects Live, but Roki, like, there was kind of a thought early on. I wrote an article about him before the season started, and I was like, with how much depth the Dodgers have, do you start him in AAA as a starting pitcher? Do you start him in the big leagues as a reliever? We've seen it work for different guys. Someone I've seen on Twitter lately is Spencer Strider, how he started in the bullpen, learned to face MLB hitters in shorter stints, just got to throw his best stuff, just 1 or 2 pitches, right? Something we see with Roki is like fastball splitter. Like that's really all he needs to throw, and then he has a fun slider you can mix in. I almost wish that we got this all season long, Roki in like a 1 or 2 inning bullpen role, Rhys.
I agree, and I think that would have allowed him to work on the fastball shape in game in kind of more, what do you call it, controlled environments, right? Like, be like, hey, we're gonna just shift the way in which you're holding the fastball here, because while the fastball velocity is still good, like it's touching 100, the shape is still a little bit suboptimal, so it makes it play down about a half grade, just using the 20 to 80 scale. But yeah, if you're just having him say, hey, go out there and air it out, I mean, they've got one of the better pure arms in all of baseball now, and that splitter is absolutely bonkers.
Looking at this Dodgers bullpen, I feel like there's a good chance that we see Roki closing games in the playoffs. Is that too much of a stretch, Rhys, or is he just one of the most talented guys back there with Tanner Scott really struggling this year? So let's transition this right into our playoff X Factor discussion, Rhys. Is Roki Sasaki the Dodgers playoff X Factor in your mind?
I think he kind of has to be. I mean, the rotation is it's going to be very fascinating to see who is in the rotation, who's out of the rotation. Like Snell, Yamamoto, maybe Emmett Sheehan is probably their third starter, with Otani maybe moving to the bullpen. But yeah, Roki Sasaki with that fastball that's touching 100. I mean, the shape's still not the best, but still, when you're throwing 100, the shape doesn't really matter, right? It's like the bell curve meme where you have the ding dong and the genius all saying he throws 100 doesn't really matter, and everybody in the middle sort of complaining about it. So Roki Sasaki might end up having to be their closer because I don't know if you've been paying too much attention about Tanner Scott. Tanner Scott's blowing games left, right, and center. So it's not been a fun Tanner Scott experience for all my Dodgers friends out there. So yeah, I think that Roki Sasaki kind of has to maybe almost de facto be the closer for this team.
And the Dodgers are really just kind of one impact reliever, one or two guys stepping up in the playoffs away from being that Dodgers team that we all know and hate, if you will. Let's move right along to the Padres. What is their X factor? And in my mind, it has to be somewhere with the bat, or is it a starting pitcher, Rhys? We know the bullpen's great already. I don't know if that's the X factor.
I think the bullpen is the X factor. I went on to Path the Show, and I basically said that I think the Padres are going to win the World Series. So, the bullpen is a big reason for that. But we keep talking about their bullpen, so let's give some light to some other players. And I think Ryan O'Hearn might be the ultimate X factor, a lefty power bat that they can kind of mix and match. They don't have to. They can use him when they need to. And honestly, he might be better deployed as a bench hitter because then they can pick and choose the spots that they need a left-handed power bat to come in. Ryan O'Hearn, it might be the X factor for this team.
For the Padres, I'm going to kind of break this game a little bit. I'm going to say their 7 through 9 hitters are the X factor. If those guys can hit enough in the playoffs to at least contribute slightly, I'm talking like 2 hits a game out of those guys, I think that could lead the Padres to the World Series. And you and me are Padres guys, as we previously discussed. The Brewers, Rhys, what do you think their X factor is?
I think their X factor is kind of just the game in which they play. I think that we're talking about a team that's aggressive on the base pass. They take the extra base. And ultimately, this is a lineup that while they have some really good players, it's a sum of their parts, right? And if Bryce Terang can continue his hot stretch to the second half, I think that Bryce Terang might be him being the middle of the order bat. This lineup, while being a good lineup, it doesn't really have that middle of the order bopper, right? Like someone that we can just be like, we need this guy's going to come in. Bryce Terang's probably not going to hit for like a grand slam or anything like that, but he can do a bases clearing double. And with the speed in which this team has, I think that Bryce Terang is the X factor.
My X factor for the Milwaukee Brewers is, can they hit a home run? Because
Yeah.
I think that matters a lot in the playoffs, and we will see very early on if this style of baseball can actually win in the playoffs, kind of similar to the Guardians. The Guardians have a little more pop, though, than the Brewers do. Moving on to the Cubs, Rhys, what do you see as the Cubs' X factor?
I think the Cubs X factor is, how does Kyle Tucker look on his return? I think that just kind of, that is the ceiling raiser for this team because the floor is fine. I don't think that the floor is that high without Kyle Tucker, or it's fine. But with Kyle Tucker, the ceiling is exponentially higher. He bumps everybody down into their more appropriate slot. Michael Busch, Nico Horner, Kyle Tucker, Ian Happ as your 4 hitter, Moises Ballesteros as your 5, Seiya Suzuki, and then at the back that lineup provides anything because Pete Armstrong is going to provide elite defense, and Dansby Swanson is one of the best shortstop defenders in the game. So I think that we're talking about if Kyle Tucker is the X factor for this team, and that's why they traded a lot to get him.
No further comments. I cannot agree more. The Philadelphia Phillies, Rhys, kind of the front runner in the NL right now. What is their X factor?
I mean, is it bad to say Kyle Schwarber? I feel like if Kyle Schwarber is their X factor, man. If he can keep up this hot power bat that he's got going, this lineup is as potent as it comes because it doesn't really let up until about 8 or 9. The back end of this lineup is actually pretty good. Brandon Marsh is a good mix and match option. Alec Boehm, you and I aren't the biggest Alec Boehm fans, but he's a perfectly fine major leaguer. Bryce Harper loves himself some good playoff home run. So Kyle Schwarber just continuing this hot stretch, and because I don't really have any qualms with this rotation, the bullpen's been pretty good lately. So I just think if Kyle Schwarber continue to be an MVP candidate into the postseason, then this team has a chance to win the World Series.
I would add on to that. I would say Kyle Schwarber and Bryce Harper. How far can they carry this team with clutch playoff moments? There's always going to be, the random guy who helps out the team in the postseason, but Kyle Schwarber and Bryce Harper are kind of the engine of this team. How far can they carry the Phillies, and is it a World Series?
Who do you think is that team? Who do you think is that guy who steps up into the postseason that we're not expecting? Bryson Stott?
I mean, Harrison Bader's been so good, but it almost feels like a cop-out to say him because he has been so good. I'm kind of looking at does Nick Castellanos get like a pinch hit off the bench if he makes the postseason roster, which I do think he will because of the pinch hitting abilities. I mean, Nick Castellanos is a guy who could do a pinch hit home run like none other. I feel like he rises to the occasion. That would be my pick, Rhys. What would be yours?
The only problem is when Nick Castellanos hits a home run, there tends to be a horrifying world event that happens.
Yeah,
so we might not want that. But yeah, Castellanos is. I honestly wonder if he's going. Otto Kemp also is not a bad shout. Like he can come in, just keep the line moving. I'm not expecting anything crazy from him, but I do think Bryson Stott might be my guy. If he can just kind of be that second leadoff hitter type, keeps the lineup moving and everything, and keeps the back end of that lineup, somewhat viable, then we're talking about this is a complete team. Like, we have the playoff rotation of Christopher Sanchez, Jesus Luzardo, and honestly, they can kind of mix and match their way through. Only Taijuan Walker's going to be a starter for this team. Ranger Suarez probably is. So yeah, I'm just going to go with Bryson Stott. It's going to be the guy who steps up, and all of a sudden, people are talking about Bryson Stott being a household name.
Yeah, yeah. Moving over to the AL, for the Seattle Mariners, I'm going to cut the line on this one. I'm going to say that their playoff X factor is two middle relievers, Rhys. It's Edward Bizardo and it's Carlos Vargas. Two guys who've thrown a bunch of innings for the Mariners this year, but haven't necessarily always been leverage arms. Edward Bizardo has been really good this year. Those are the guys who are going to get to the big three at the back end, and they need to perform. Seattle Mariners starting pitching can get them to the fifth, but what happens if they only go five and we need someone to throw the sixth inning? It's going to be Edward Bizardo or Carlos Vargas, and they have been shaky at times this year. So I'm looking at those two guys to really step up in the playoffs. Who do you got, Rhys?
I got Bryce Miller. I think he might be the guy who moves into the bullpen and can kind of help out and be that fifth through sixth, get the lineup once or twice, once, and then be an absolute weapon. He's always been described as having a more reliever-ish arsenal and stuff like that, although he's been fantastic. So I think that he's probably their playoff X factor.
Okay. Now we're going to go to your Tigers, who are currently in a playoff spot. Who is the Tigers' X factor?
Wenzel Perez? No, I'm just joking, man. I don't need to see any more of that nonsense. How often can Tarik Skubal pitch is going to be the X now. I think Casey Mize. If Casey Mize is your third starter, I think you're doing pretty okay. I think there's worse third starters out there. And I think that if he can just kind of, pitch 5 solid innings and come in, and Will Vest, and, maybe Will Vest has to come in earlier in technically not a leverage situation. You know what? Actually, I'm going to change my mind. I think Rafael Montero is going to be the absolute X factor. If he decides that he can kind of be what he's sort of been since he's been the Tigers, I think that lengthens out this bullpen. You can use Troy Melton as a mix and match weapon, Tyler Holton as a mix and match lefty, and then you can kind of just have Rafael Montero carry over the 6th or 7th inning, and then allow Will Vest and Kyle Finnegan to sort of come in and close the game out. I think that Rafael Montero, being in the leverage bridge situation, is the X factor, and then they need to score some runs. That's an X factor.
That they do. The bats altogether need to step up a little bit. I'm looking at Jack Flaherty for the Tigers, who we saw have some big moments with the Dodgers last year in the playoffs. We also saw have some real playoff struggles as well throughout his career. So I'm looking at Flaherty, and which Flaherty are we going to get this postseason? Looking at the Guardians, my pick for the Guardians would be kind of similar to a team we talked about earlier in the Brewers. Is how far can this brand of baseball get you? But realistically, the guy that I'm specifically looking at is like Kyle Manzardo, your 4-hole hitter. Is he the guy this postseason that's going to like supply the power for this team outside of like a Jose Ramirez? I'm thinking if the Guardians get a big postseason from Kyle Manzardo, things might end up looking pretty good for them. They might, advance a little bit.
I'm with you. I think Kyle Manzardo. I think that their playoff X factor is that back end lineup, because the back of the lineup's not great. But if Daniel Schneemann is just continuing to provide clutch hit in the postseason like he has been, this Tiger series, I think that Daniel Schneemann can kind of catapult himself into being the anchor for that back half of the lineup, because the back half of the lineup really needs a lot of help. I mean, Bo Naylor, Gabriel Arias, Daniel Schneemann, CJ Kafis, Brian Rocchio. It's not the best group of guys. I mean, when your DH is hitting 8th, it kind of shows you what your options sort of are. So I think Daniel Schneemann's kind of the X factor for this offense, because let's be real, you and I are not worried about this bullpen at all. Hunter Gaddis comes in and just locks things down, and looks like he goes out there and wrestles gators after games. So yeah, him, Cade Smith, Eric Sabrowski, Matt Festa, Tim Ferrinan, Jacob Junis, Colby Ellard. It's one of the best bullpens entering this postseason.
Looking at the Red Sox now, I really like this Red Sox team, Rhys. But I think that there are some question marks in the lineup. Mainly, Ceddanne Rafaela. What kind of bat can we get out of Rafaela in the playoffs? Because if he's an absolute non-factor at the bat, like he has been at times the second half of this year, that's just burning a spot at your 6 or 7 hole in your lineup. What can we get out of Ceddanne Rafaela besides elite defense? I think if he's hitting home runs in the playoffs, the Red Sox might win a series or two.
Yeah, he has a chance to kind of rip a game wide open because he does have that sort of power. I'm going to go with Willie Abreu. How much has the injuries that he's had this season? He has missed some time this season. How much of that is impacting what's going on with Willie Abreu? I mean, he's one of the better right field defenders, but he's not playing right field right now. He's DHing, and that means that Masataka Yoshida right now is playing a lot of right field. And I'm going to just go out there and put it out there. Masataka Yoshida is maybe the worst defensive right fielder in the postseason. So yeah, you do not want to see that. He could cost some games in right field. So Willie Abreu's bat needs to really overcompensate for Masataka Yoshida's weakness in the right field.
I think that's a super good shout. Moving on to the Blue Jays now. My X factor for the Blue Jays is going to be the righties in their bullpen. Can Jeff Hoffman get it done in the playoffs as he's been shaky at times this year? The velo's been down a little bit. Is Sir Anthony Dominguez a true setup guy? I actually trust the lefties quite a bit. Eric Lauer, Mason Flaherty, and Brendan Little. But the righties is where things start to get a little bit weird for me, Rhys. So how good can that Blue Jays bullpen be would be my X factor.
My X factor is who is the third starter for this team. Do you have Max Scherzer be the third starter on this team? Do you have Trey Savage be the third starter on this team? Trey Savage has been quite good as a major leaguer, so that's going to be my ultimate X factor because I really like. I kind of really enjoy that Anthony Santander might not be the best free agent signing, but the fact that they can kind of just use him as a bench bat right now really opens up a lot of things for them. So who is the third starter? That is the X factor for the Blue Jays.
Our last team now, the New York Yankees. For me, I'm going to say the left side of their infield is the X factor. Can Ryan McMahon rebound from a really shaky September? And can Anthony Volpe do quite literally anything? If either of those two guys provides any kind of value at all, I think the Yankees have a much better chance at advancing far in the postseason.
My X factor is very similar. Anthony Volpe is involved. Mine is the up the middle defense. Jazz Chisholm is a fundamentally poor defender at second base very often. Austin Wells is not the best defensive catcher. Trent Grisham is going to allow balls to drop that he really shouldn't. He needs to go out there and be a little bit more aggressive in the outfield. I've seen it a couple times this season where I'm like, that's a play that he could have made and he chose not to. So the up the middle defense for the Yankees, because that is where they are so fundamentally poor. Anthony Volpe is playing through a torn labrum, I believe. So that's not great to see from your shortstop. Jose Caballero will have to be coming in playing a lot of defensive replacement in really leveraged situations for them because Anthony Volpe is not providing anything with the bat and he's not providing anything on defense. He's actually been a hindrance on defense lately.
Yeah. Yeah. All right, Rhys. Well, that is our playoff X factors. I quite enjoyed that exercise.
Me too.
All right. We're going to move on to talking about the MVP race a little bit here, Rhys. Let's give a shout to some guys who are going to finish between maybe 5 and 10 in the MVP race because I do think that the top 5 is decently filled out already. So we're going to start in the American League, right? So your top 5 is some form of Aaron Judge, Cal Raleigh, Bobby Witt Jr., Tarek Skubal, and Jose Ramirez. Do you have any arguments with that top 5?
No, I think it should be Cal Raleigh, Aaron Judge, Bobby Witt Jr. probably at third, or Jose Ramirez at third, and then Tarek Skubal.
Yeah, I would agree with you. So now let's look at some guys in the 5 to 10 range that you think deserve MVP votes. Rhys, who are you thinking?
I promise I'm not just saying this because you're on here. I think Brian Wu should definitely be considered for a top 10 MVP finish. He has been absolutely fantastic. He's been the playoff ace. He's made it through the entire season. I think he only recently just had his normal Brian Wu having to go get evaluated after a start sort of situation only for the first time this season. 15, we're not big wins guys, but 15 wins on the season for a second place team should get you some MVP consideration. Not that I think he's ever going to be anything more than a, 7th or 8th ballot guy, depending on how highly you rank Brian Wu. But Brian Wu would definitely be someone I think needs some love on the pitching side. And then, do you want to jump it on some pitching side? I think Michael Garcia deserves some love too. His season has been absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, I mean, Michael Garcia should finish in the top 10. I think it'll be interesting to see how voters kind of value his utility capabilities. I'm looking at Nick Kurtz, Rhys. I think Nick Kurtz deserves some 10th place votes, just being the best first baseman in baseball this year.
I'm with you 100%. I think that him sort of just jumping in and being as awesome as he has been a revelation for everybody. So yeah, I'm 100% with the Nick Kurtz love.
Yeah, and I'd love to see like some other pitchers get a nod, like a guy like Hunter Brown. I think deserves to be in that conversation for sure. And then I wonder what will happen with Jeremy Pena, because when I think about him, I don't think about a top 10 player in the American League, but he has been there with the defense, and the bat's been sneaky good this year. Reese, do you think Jeremy Pena is a top 10 MVP vote getter?
I think so too. You have to factor in that he played shortstop. He's the strikeout rate isn't crazy. Hit 300. We have to think about the way getting the mind of some of these MVP voters. The fact that a shortstop hit 300, had almost 6 WAR on the season. He's definitely a top 10 guy.
All right, let's talk about the National League now, Reese. Shohei Ohtani is our MVP. Is that fair to say?
I think yes. I think 100%.
And in the second place for WAR, Reese, let's talk about this guy a little bit. Geraldo Perdomo.
Your guy and mine. The guy's walking more than he's striking out. This season has been absolutely bonkers. 137 WRC plus, 19 home runs, 26 stolen bases. Geraldo Perdomo's gotten it done. He's probably been, I think he's going to finish second in the MVP voting, which is pretty bonkers because no one expected this. If you threw a bet on Geraldo Perdomo to win an MVP, you probably are like doing backflips. You probably also know the future. But yeah, Geraldo Perdomo has been absolutely fantastic, locking down shortstop defensively for a for a team that has had surges of being good and bad. I think that Geraldo Perdomo is worth a shout at top 5 MVP finish.
I could definitely see Kyle Schwarber getting some second place votes just because he's been kind of the guy that we've talked about as like, oh, him or Shohei, even though it was kind of always Shohei. Despite being 12th on the WAR leaderboards, I think Kyle Schwarber within the top 3 does make a lot of sense. One guy that I would love to see in the top 3 alongside Geraldo Perdomo is Paul Skeens, though. I think a pitcher finishing top 3 in the MVP voting is absolutely awesome, and I slightly prefer him to those of like Trey Turner, Corbin Carroll, Christopher Sanchez, Juan Soto. I know the Soto kind of top 3 MVP buzz is starting to buzz, I suppose.
Yeah,
I'm not
stealing
sold
bases for no
on
reason.
that. I think Paul Skeens deserves that shout, Reese. I'd love to see a pitcher get in the top 3.
I think Paul Skeens has been one of the top 3 players in the National League all season long. I mean, we're talking about a guy who just put a 197. I was about to say 100. ERA. And we're not big ERA guys, but 197 ERA is absolutely fantastic, and everything under the hood kind of supports that. Who doesn't walk anybody, strikes out a bunch of guys. Is absolutely one of the most electric pitchers we've ever seen. We're going on the second straight season of him being the best pitcher in the National League.
Looking down the board in the National League a little bit, there's some really fun names on this list. 14th in WAR, Nico Horner. 19th, Bryce Terang. 21st, Ranger Suarez. 23rd, Andy Pajes. Reese, Kyle Stowers is on there. We got a lot of fun names down the board. Are there any of these guys that you really hope get some top 10 votes this year?
I would love if Kyle Stowers got some love. I don't think he will, but he has a really, really good shout. Will Smith continues to be one of the more underrated players in baseball. He's been fantastic. Bryce Terang, honestly, he's the guy that I think he deserves a top 10 MVP finish. He's been the best hitter for the best team in baseball. So, using the Bill Simmons-ism, he's been, I think the guy that deserves it for the Milwaukee Brewers.
Yeah, and he plays second base, but like one of the best hitters on that team, and he's a great defender too. I know that the metrics haven't liked him as much this year, or else this would be like a 5 or 6 WAR season out of Bryce Terang.
Yeah.
A guy I'm looking at is Nico Horner, kind of in the same breath. I mean, one of the best defenders and one of the best hitters, and he plays a style of baseball unlike anyone else on this list, Reese. He hates hitting home runs. He loves hitting singles and playing great defense. I would love to see Nico Horner get some love, even over a guy like Pete Crow Armstrong.
Yeah, I would agree. Pico Armstrong, his tale of two halves has been absolutely fascinating.
Yeah. You're telling me I feel like he might have lost WAR in the second half of this year. Wasn't he at 5 like a couple months into the season?
It felt like it, and then all of a sudden it felt like he had like 25 home runs at the All-Star break, and just, who would have guessed the guy with the most erratic plate approach would have big swings in his offensive production? Not me.
Yeah, yeah.
MVP,
all right, well,
some are saying.
Yeah, he was a top 3 guy for the first 4 months of the season, right? And now he might not even finish in the top 10. So we'll see how that shakes out. But I'm good talking about MVP races, Reese. Shall we move on to a little bit of minor league baseball talk?
Yes, because we are a prospect website.
Let's talk about minor leaguers that we want to see debut on opening day 2026 first, and then we can talk about some guys that we really hope debut later in the season. So we'll just kind of go open discussion here. Who are some guys that you want to see debut on opening day?
I would love to see Kevin McGonigal. I genuinely believe he's one of the 9 best hitters in this organization, even at AA. I do not care. I would love to see, let's pull up Andrew Painter get a chance to break camp with the Phillies. The only problem is the Phillies rotation might absolutely be loaded. So that might be the ultimate thing that stops them. I would also love to see Bryce Eldridge is getting some major league time, so he doesn't really count. I would love to see Carson Bench. And do you know one of my bigger shouts? Liam Doyle. I think Liam Doyle does not need to be wasting a lot of those bullets in AA and AAA. I think that, let's just see what that stuff looks like. And I think the Cardinals are going to be a more aggressive organization after being one of the more conservative organizations for my entire life.
Yeah, I think that's a super good shout. You could even start him in the bullpen.
There we go. Break him in that way.
How about JJ Weatherholt? He feels like a pretty decent lock to maybe start opening day with the Cardinals, but then again, it's the Cardinals. So I guess we don't know. But I think JJ Weatherholt deserves a spot on opening day, Rhys. Do you agree with that?
I'm 100% with you. He's been ready for Major League Baseball since the second half of the season.
Yeah, right?
I don't want him getting AAA-itis.
Yeah, how about a guy like Walker Jenkins, Rhys? What if he stays healthy through spring training and debuts with this weak Minnesota team early on trying to get a PPI pick?
I would be with it. I think that the power that he's starting to show is kind of making me think that he might be a top 10-ish prospect. I feel like we're gonna be talking about this until we get to the top 100. I'm gonna say that probably like 50 guys are top 10 prospects, and that kind of shows you the caliber of the top 10 this year. But his power, his ability to play center field, his contact skills, everything sort of looks really, really good for him and is pointing up. I do think that the Twins are going to be conservative in that aspect, so I don't think he is. And ultimately, we have to throw out the guy that we all know in the American League that's going to probably break camp with the team. Is Tyler Bremner.
That's a good shout right there. How about Gage Jump? What if he skips AAA and immediately becomes one of the 5 best pitchers on the Athletics pitching staff? Because I think he's a top 5 pitcher on that team right now, Rhys.
I think that he is because, and you do not want to send pitchers to Las Vegas. Las Vegas is an absolute launching pad. You're going to destroy that guy's confidence before he ever gets a chance. You might, not that pitching in Sacramento is much better for the old confidence meter, but yeah, I think that he might need to take that jump up to Major League Baseball.
I love the idea of Gage Jump making the jump.
I'm not looking forward to all the puns that people are going to make when he does make his Major League debut. It's going to be unbearable.
All right. How about Joe Mack, Rhys? That's a guy who I think should be starting at catcher for the Miami Marlins on opening day. And I think that he is a Rookie of the Year case, just like Drake Baldwin does this year.
Ooh, I love that. I love the Joe Mack shout. Return of the Mack. His prospect stock is so back, and I'm so in. Let's stay with the Marlins a little bit. Robbie Snelling. I would love to see him get a chance. His season has been fantastic. He
needs to be.
He has nothing left to prove in AAA. Let's also stay in the same division. Aiden Miller. Alec Boehm can be traded for parts, and Aiden Miller has more offensive upside and more defensive versatility. So I want to see Aiden Miller up.
100%. How far away are we from a Harlan Suzana debut, Rhys? Do you think he gets up next year?
Do you think a 35-year-old president of baseball operations is going to make that one of his first moves? Let's stay with the Twins a little bit. I don't want to dismiss that. I think that Harlan Suzana, I think he's going to be out for quite a bit. The injury is going to keep him out for a little bit. Emmanuel Rodriguez, he's going to if he stays healthy, maybe he breaks camp with the team, and he's going to swing 20% of the time. It's going to drive me nuts. I would love that personally. For me personally, I would love for him to graduate tomorrow, but he's not going to because I think he's an interesting guy, but I'm tired of ranking him as a prospect.
I think that's super fair.
How
about a guy
Thomas
like
White?
George? Oh, yeah. No, I like Thomas White a lot. How about George Lombard Jr.? Not our favorite guy. Do you think he makes it at some point in 2026? I'm kind of off of the opening day thing at this point. Now I'm looking at guys who have a chance to debut next year.
I think that he has a chance to debut, but the Yankees do get kind of weird. They get kind of conservative in AAA and keep guys there for a little bit longer than they probably should be. So I'm going to go with probably not. He's probably a 2027 guy.
Okay. And now my next shout would be one J.R. Ritchie in Atlanta, Rhys. This is a guy who's I believe their minor league pitcher of the year this season. Has been super good throughout multiple levels, and Atlanta loves to rush their pitchers through the upper minors, which Ritchie is currently at. What do we think about maybe not opening day, but early 2026 debut from JR?
I think that he definitely has a chance to be. I mean, it depends on how aggressive they get in free agency. Another guy who I think has a chance to maybe break it is Jackson Wiggins. I think Jackson Wiggins is a good shout too. Honestly, he might be one of their better starters right now. So yeah, I'm with you on J.R. Ritchie.
Chase the water, Rhys?
Is he going to stay
Are we
healthy?
there with him yet? No, you see, that I cannot tell you. If he is healthy, do you think he debuts early on in 2026?
If he's healthy and you can predict that, then you have serious like clairvoyant powers. Yeah. So if he can stay healthy, then he has a chance to because he's probably one of their best right field defenders. I mean, they have and just offensive bats in general. Do you want to shout that I really like who could break camp for the team because this is a guy who cannot stay healthy? Connor
Yeah.
Prelip. If he could break camp as a reliever with the Minnesota Twins and be one of their best relief options.
I want to say Enrique Bradfield Jr. I don't think he will because he did look pretty rough in AAA in a short sample size when he did finally get promoted up there. Looking down the board a little bit, I don't know if I have too many more guys, Rhys.
Early on, Kalen Culpepper. I would love to
That
see
would
it.
be a super fun one. I mean, Minnesota, quite literally the whole farm system should be
Andrew Mendez.
thought about here. there's options for them.
There's a lot of organizational runway for some of these guys to make their debut.
Yeah. Any other shouts you wanna give out here, or we kind of finishing up?
I'm working on the Nationals list right now. Do you want a deep shout?
Yeah.
Christian Franklin. I think Christian Franklin as the fourth outfielder for that team could be interesting.
How about a Ryan Ward, big leagues, Rhys?
That's not gonna happen. Oh, is he getting traded? Because if he gets traded, maybe.
I hope so. I would love to see Ryan Ward play some big league baseball just because of how unfortunate has any other guy gets at least an MLB plate appearance this year, other than Ryan Ward because he plays for the Dodgers. Is that fair to say?
Yeah. Do we want to go with who was the second rounder for the Angels this year? Chase Shores. Chase Shores.
Yeah.
he's a lock to be in that bullpen.
Yeah, who are the Angels gonna let me look at their draft class really fast while you stall, and I will tell you exactly who the fastest mover is.
Chase Shores. I'm surprised that Chase Shores didn't already break camp or didn't break with the team. Honestly, we're talking about a really good fastball and a really good breaking ball, and then nothing really else.
And Rhys is having some technical difficulties, so I'm going to finish up this episode by myself. The Angels prospect who's going to debut maybe opening day 2026 is Lucas Malstedt, the reliever from Clemson. This is in the same mold that the Angels have done before, taking a reliever somewhat early in the draft, giving them a little bit of money and just rushing him to the big leagues and seeing what he'll be right away. I could very easily see Lucas Malstedt debuting early on for the Los Angeles Angels. And that is going to do it for our minor league segment on guys that we want to see debut in 2026. And now let's move over to some Prospects Live news. What's been going on at the website? Just to remind you guys, prospectslive.com. You can subscribe for as little as $5 a month and get all of our offerings such as, Dynasty tools. Oh, hey, Rhys, what's going on? I'm going through Prospects Live news.
The internet is trying to silence me. No, yeah, I'm back. Yeah.
So talking about Prospects Live news, Rhys, what's been going on that you have been interested in lately? I want to shout out the top 600 fantasy prospects. There are so many dang names on that list that it is just interesting to go through and see what our coworkers think of different guys and see, who's the high guy on someone, who's the low guy on someone. It always is really cool to spark conversation that way. Anything else been going on at Prospects Live for you, Rhys?
Yeah, we have the Dynasty diplomas. Lucas has been fantastic. That's been one of my favorite reads this entire season. And obviously, I don't know if you touched on it while I was in the wilderness there. The Bowman Chrome preview. Our team did a fantastic job. Joe Lowry, whenever he writes something, I read it, even if it takes me a month to get through it because it is he writes novels while I write like blurbs basically. But yeah, I think that we're talking, and then we still have the top 50 college prospects, and then on the horizon we're going to start dropping our list soon. I know you and the draft team have a list coming out soon. I have the national list coming out soon, which I mentioned earlier, and I think that's really about. Thomas is 3 up 3 down series, and I know we talked about it. I don't know if you want to do it right now. We want to start doing like a live stream on Sundays in between the late slate of NFL games and Sunday night football. I think that's a perfect time for people to jump on and hang out with us. We can talk some prospects. We can talk about anything you guys want. We can have some of our prospects live staff members come along and just sort of hang out for about an hour, and and then we'll post it on the audio feed about a day later or two, because I think that's a really good way to engage with the patrons. Because like I said, for the 3/3 of a cup of coffee, you can join what I think is some of the best prospect coverage in baseball.
Yeah. And that will do it for this episode of On Deck. Thank you guys so much for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you possibly live on Sunday. See you next time.